Behold, God's Trumpet Call Presents, fourth reading from the Book of Deuteronomy, 46th reading from the Torah. Outline of Torah portion. Choose between blessings and curses. Deuteronomy chapter 11 verse 26 to chapter 12 verse 10. Blessings and curses. Verse 26 to 28. Moshe tells the children of Israel to choose between blessings and curses. He said, I set before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I commanded you today, and the curse, if you do not obey the commandments of the Lord your God. The three great elements of the old covenant God made with Israel on the Mount Sinai were the law, the sacrifice, and the choice. They were given a choice to obey and be blessed, or to disobey and be cursed, making blessings and curses known to all Israel. Verse 29 to 32. Moshe commanded Israel that when they come into the promised land, they are to put the blessings on Mount Gerizim and the curse on the Mount Ebal. The recitation of the blessings on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal were carried out later, and its accounts are found in Joshua chapter 8, verse 30 to 35. God wanted this covenant to be known to all Israel. The choice were made known to all Israel because the entire nation was bound by its covenant. Name Gerizim is supposed to be associated with fruitful harvest, and the name Ebal is supposed to be associated with barrenness. Command to destroy pagan places of worship. Chapter 12 verse 1 to 4. Moshe commanded Israel to destroy all the places where the nations which you shall dispossess serve their gods, destroy their altars, break their sacred pillars, burn their wooden images with fire. Israel were commanded to cut down the carved images of their gods and destroy their names from that place. Israel was commanded not to worship the Lord with such things. God's appointed place for worship. Chapter 12 verse 5 to 10. Israel was commanded to seek the place where the Lord their God chooses out of all the tribes to put his name for his dwelling place, and Israel was to go there. Israel shall take all their burnt offerings, sacrifices, tithes, heave offerings of your hand, vowed offerings, your freewill offerings, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks. There Israel is to eat before the Lord and rejoice in all their work in which God has blessed them. The designated place is Jerusalem, where he will choose to rest his presence. Moshe emphasized that once they cross over Jordan and come to the promised land, worshipping Adonai will be done exactly as directed by him in the way that pleases him. A prescribed place of worship, Jerusalem. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 11 to verse 28. Designated place in the land of Israel. Verse 11 to 14. Moshe tells Israel that God himself will choose a special place in the land of Israel for worship. We know the city that he chose is Jerusalem. Joy of worship in God's appointed place. Moshe tells the children of Israel that when they cross over the Jordan and dwell in the promised land, God will give rest from all their enemies around them, and they will dwell in safety. And God will choose a place to make his name abide. A particular place important to worship. Worship at God's appointed place should be marked with joy. You shall rejoice emphasizes that it is commanded to rejoice. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 16 tells us to rejoice in the Lord always. And in Philippians chapter 4 verse 4 it says again, I will say rejoice. We are commanded to rejoice. Things permitted and prohibited in worship. Verse 15 to 28. Moshe said, you are permitted to slaughter and eat meat within all your gates, whatever your heart desires, according to how God has blessed you. Israel is permitted to slaughter kosher animals and eat the meat in other places. Israel is prohibited to eat the blood. They are to pour it out on the earth like water. Designated place is the only place where certain animal offerings may be brought. A Jewish farmer separates portions of his harvest and gives them to the priest, teruma, and the Levites. The first tithe is called Masa Rishon in Hebrew. Another tithe is separated, which is called Masa Sheni in Hebrew. The second tithe can only be eaten in Jerusalem. A summary of tithes that are to be separated from each crop. Teruma, given to a priest. According to the sages, a person should give 2% of the harvest. First tithe, Masha Rishon, given to a Levite, 10% of what remains after Teruma. Terumat Masa, given to the Levite, to a priest, 10% of the Masa Rishon he received. Second tithe, Masha Sheni, separated in years 1, 2, 4, and 5 of the 7-year Shemitah cycle, taken to Jerusalem and eaten there, 10% of the remaining crop. Masha Ani, separated in years 3 and 6 of the 7-year Shemitah cycle, given to the poor, 10% of the remaining crop. Not to investigate how other nations worship their gods. Deuteronomy chapter 12 verse 29 to chapter 13 verse 19. The worship of God must be pure. Verse 29 to 32. Moshe warned Israel not to investigate how nations they dispossess serve their gods, not to be ensnared to follow them. Israel was warned not to worship the Lord their God in that way. God would not accept any offering of worship unless it is offered as commanded by him. He must be worshipped in spirit and in truth. John chapter 4 verse 24. Moshe tells Israel to carefully observe everything he commanded them to do. Protection against the deceiver. Chapter 13 verse 1 to 3. Moshe warns Israel about the threats that could come from within Israel, those who would deceive Israel, a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, with a sign or a wonder. Even if a prophet has produced signs or wonders, they by themselves are not proof that the person is a true prophet. A false prophet must be put to death. The penalty for the deceiver. Verse 4 to 11. Moshe tells Israel that a person who entices them to worship other gods must be put to death. Israel was commanded to keep focused on a faithful walk with God according to his truth. Israel was warned not to allow even their close family relations to lead them to worship other gods. They are to reject such influences. They are prohibited to consent or even listen to such false teachers. If a prophet comes performing miracles, but if he leads people into idolatry or he teaches to break the commandments, people are not to believe in him. If a city gives over to idolatry, verse 12 to verse 14. If it was reported regarding an Israelite city given over to idolatry, they need to investigate carefully. A careful investigation would guard Israel against making harsh judgments. Penalty for a city given over to idolatry. If an entire city has gone astray to worship a false god, such a report must be investigated, and if the report is found to be true, then the entire city must be destroyed by fire, and the city should never be rebuilt. Command to separate from pagan practices. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 1 to 21. Command to abstain from pagan burial customs. Verse 1. Moshe commanded Israel not to cut oneself, nor to shave the front of the head for the dead, for Israel are the children of the Lord. Cutting oneself or shaving the front of the head for the dead was a practice among the pagan cultures surrounding Israel. It was common to cut the body or shave the front of the head for the dead, a pagan burial ritual. Israel is to respect the body as God's creation, which was not to be disfigured or misused. Believers may mourn the passing of loved ones, but they have eternal hope in Yeshua HaMashiach, and as believers, our mourning should be different from that of the pagan practices. Reason for separation, verse 2. Moshe tells Israel that they are a holy people to the Lord. To be holy is to separate. From the beginning, the Lord separated Israel for him. Believers are also holy people, as Apostle Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. The Lord has chosen you to be a people for himself. They are chosen by God to be his own special people. Believers too are a chosen people, as Apostle Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people. The children of Israel are a special treasure to the Lord. Believers too are an inheritance to the Lord. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 18. Moshe told them that the Lord has chosen them above all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. They are holy, chosen, and a special treasure. With it carries a special responsibility. Command to be separated regarding foods. Chapter 3, verse 21. The Lord commanded Israel not to eat anything that is considered by God to be an abomination. Israel is permitted to eat animals that have a split hoof and chew the cud. The camel, the hare, the hyrax, and the pig have only one of the essential criteria. Israel may eat animals that live in water only if they have both fins and scales. Kosher birds may be eaten. The eagle, vultures, ospreys, kites, any kind of buzzard, raven, ostriches, screech owls, seagulls, hawk, little owls, great owls, horned owls, pelicans, barn owls, cormorants, storks, any kind of heron, hoopoes, the bats, and all kinds of winged swarming creatures are unclean for you. They are not to be eaten. All clean flying creatures you may eat. Israel is not to eat any animal that dies naturally. You may let a stranger staying with you eat it or sell it to a foreigner. Israel is not to boil a young animal in its mother's milk. This law was to instill a gentle appreciation of the natural order. Regulations concerning tithes. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 22 to 29. The word tithe means a tenth. Most of the churches rely on the tithing they get from the congregation. The concept was taken from the Torah. Tithing was practiced even 430 years prior to the giving of the Torah. Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov tithed. The command to tithe was given to Israel specifically to tithe from the agricultural produce. in the land of Israel during the days of the temple. In temple times, a separation from the produce known as teruma gedola was made, which was given to the Kohen. Nowadays, all are considered to be ritually impure, and the Kohen may not consume teruma. So only a small amount is designated as teruma. The Torah commanded farmers to give 10% of the produce of their fields, vineyards, orchards, flocks, and cattle to the Levites, which is known as Maser Rishon. Maser means tenth. Tenth of the remaining produce is designated as Maser Rishon, the first tithe. It was given to the Levites and could be consumed by anyone. Levites in turn gave a 10% of that to the priesthood Kohen. This mechanism sustained the Levitical priestly system. Israel farmers were to set aside the additional tithe as well. The farmers were to spend this 10% on themselves on Jerusalem during the festivals. They were also to share with the poor. Giving 10% also became an important baseline for charitable donations. Second tithe, Maser Sheni, verse 22 to 29. The second tithe is to be eaten before God, meaning in the city that he chooses. Also the firstborn of calves, sheep, goats are to be brought to Jerusalem and eaten there. If a person is living far away from Jerusalem and it is difficult for the person to take the tithe there, then he may exchange his tithe for money. That money earns the status of Maser Sheni, second tithe. It is brought to Jerusalem and used to purchase food and beverages to consume within the city. If a farmer has not been able to distribute all his tithes, he is responsible to distribute them at the end of each 3-year cycle. Terumat Maser. A tenth of the Maser Rishon is separated as Terumat Maser. Same status as Teruma Gedola, and it belongs to the Kohen. Maser Ani is the poor man's tithe, which was given to the poor but could be consumed by anyone. Verbally designate the Maser Ani nowadays and eat it once this has been done. Early believers outside the land of Israel gave 10% of their income to the poor. To the teachers of the Torah, the prophets in their community, Yeshua HaMashiach taught to support the ministries of the Word of God. Apostle Paul also taught that elders who teach the Word of God should be supported by the believers. Today, the Jewish invest their 10% in the education of the Torah scholars or give to the poor or to other charitable causes. Even believers should tithe from their income. It is good to support the ministries that serve the kingdom of Yeshua HaMashiach and the poor. Jews and believers are encouraged to give over and above the 10% baseline to support their community of believers. Some might want to set aside a portion of the tithe to spend during the festivals. The law concerning the sabbatical year, giving to the needy brothers. Deuteronomy chapter 15 verse 1 to 18. Release of debt. Verse 1 to 6. The Torah commands that the Jewish farmers in the land of Israel not to sow their fields during the 7th year of every 7-year cycle. 7th year is the Shemitah year. Verse 1 to 6 deals with the remission of loans. Every creditor is to give up what he has loaned to his fellow member of the community. He is not to force his neighbor or relative to repay it, because Adonai's time of remission has been proclaimed. A loan made to a foreigner, a non-Jew, is not subject to remission and may still be collected. If a Jew loaned money to another Jew, any amount of the loan that is still unpaid at the end of the 7th year must be cancelled. The Lord does not want anyone to be needy among the Jews. Those who are able should loan to the poor among them. Loans should be made even if there is a possibility that the loan will be cancelled by the 7th year. Giving to the needy. Verse 7 to 11. If one of your brothers among you is needy in any of your town, in the land, do not harden your heart or shut your hand from giving to your needy brother. Lend to him enough to meet his need and enable him to obtain what he wants. Moshe warned Israel to guard themselves against mean spiritual thoughts. Israel is not to be stingy towards the needy brother because of the Shemitah year is at hand, but to give him not grudgingly, but you give him, and God will bless you in all your work, in everything you undertake. Israel is to open their hands to the poor. The law concerning Jewish slaves, verse 12 to 18. Moshe commanded that if a Hebrew man or a woman is sold to you, he is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year you are to set him free. Don't send him empty-handed, but supply him generously. From what Adonai has blessed you with, you are to give him. Remember that you too were slaves in the land of Egypt. If he does not want to leave you and then take an awl and pierce his ear through, right into the door, and then he will be your slave forever. Do the same with your female slave. You are not to resent it when you set him free, since during his 6 years of service, he has been worth twice as much as a hired employee. Adonai will bless you in everything you do. Firstborn of livestock. 3 pilgrim festivals. Deuteronomy chapter 15 verse 19 to chapter 16 verse 17. The law of the firstborn. Verse 19. Moshe reminded Israel that all firstborn males that come from the herd and the flock you shall sanctify to the Lord. Do not work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. God required the firstborn be set apart to him for at least 3 reasons. First, because the Israel was God's firstborn. Second, the firstborn was thought to be the best, and the best was always given to God. Third, it was to be a reminder to all generations of when God redeemed Israel, his firstborn. The firstborn male from the herd and the flock is to be taken to Jerusalem, where it will be slaughtered and eaten. However, if it has a disqualifying blemish, you may slaughter it and eat it in your home city. The 3 pilgrim festivals, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Chapter 16, verse 1 to 17. Moshe commanded to observe the month of Abib and keep Pesach to Adonai, for it is in Abib that Adonai brought you out of Egypt. Pesach offering could be from flock and herd. Sacrifice it to take place where Adonai will choose to have his name live. Israel was prohibited to eat hametz with it. For 7 days you are to eat with it matzah, the bread of affliction. From Egypt you came out in haste, and you will remember it as long as you live. No leaven is to be found in your territory for 7 days. The meat from the sacrifice on the first day in the evening is to remain all night until morning. Pesach offering will only be sacrificed on the place where Adonai your God will choose to have his name live. Roast it and eat it. 6 days you are to eat matzah. On the 7th day, hold a festive assembly for Adonai your God, and do not do any work. Count 7 weeks. Begin counting 7 weeks from the time you first put your sickle to the standing grain. Observe the festival of Shavuot with a voluntary offering in accordance with the degree to which Adonai your God has prospered you. You are to rejoice in the presence of Adonai your God, you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female slaves, the Levim living in your towns, the foreigners, orphans, and widows living among you, in the place where Adonai your God will choose to have his name live. Keep the festival of Sukkot for 7 days, and you have gathered the produce of your threshing floor and winepress. Rejoice at your festivals. Hold the festival for 7 days in the place God will choose. 3 times a year all men are to appear in the presence of Adonai in the place which he will choose. At the festival of Matzah, at the festival of Shavuot, and at the festival of Sukkot. Do not show up empty-handed. Every man is to give what he can, in accordance with the blessing Adonai has given you.